Hello, welcome back. My name is Darren, and today we're going to be talking Vram. It's an interesting topic. It causes a lot of discussions, not always friendly. But as a as someone that's a consumer, which is exactly what I am just a consumer. Obviously, I use my PCs for gaming, and that's all I know. I don't do productivity work on PC. I don't have any type of IT experience. I'm not great with software. I'm not in that type of line of work. I don't have like high qualifications. I work on cars all day, so I use PC for gaming, and that's it. Obviously, watch a bit of YouTube on it, whatever. But the topic of VRAM in the last 2 years is something that's almost impossible to get away from. And it's something that I find quite interesting, sometimes annoying, but sometimes something that you almost find there's never any real answers to it. So it's kind of discussion that I thought would be interesting to bring up in the hope that I might get some activity out of it. I'd love to have, contact or some sort of discussion with game developers and stuff like that to actually know some of kind of the answers towards it. Because I mean, the whole thought of this topic today was the fact that I was discussing with someone just today about the kind of disappointment of the 50 series rumours. So the 5080 in particular, rumoured to still only be using 16 gigabytes of VRAM, although it's rumoured to be on GDDR7 other than the GDDR6X that it's on now, but still only the 16 gigabytes, which is, and this guy's not alone in this. Obviously, throughout other, discussions, further discussions, looking around the internet, there's obviously a lot of kind of disappointment in this 16 gigabytes of VRAM. And it kind of made me think, where will this go? As in, now, when I first came back to PC and built my first kind of gaming PC in the last couple of years, the first graphics card I bought was a 2070 Super, I think it was. And I can't even tell you how much VRAM that had, because I don't think it was even a consideration at the time. I don't think I cared. It wasn't something that I looked into, and it wasn't something that was even really discussed. And it's not like I buy something without kind of doing a bit of research. But I don't think if I searched around at the time there was any noise around VRAM. So I bought the card, enjoyed it, fine. Funny enough, I think we got to the 30 series, and I think I wanted to upgrade. I decided I wanted to upgrade to a 3080, and I couldn't find one at the time. COVID, all that was going on, mining, made it pretty impossible to find a 3080. And it got to the point that I think I'd sold the system that had the 2070. I'd already built a platform, and I was literally sitting on waiting for a GPU, and I couldn't find anything. And in the end, I think the best. Now, there was an opportunity to buy a 6800 XT, so I thought, okay, I'll give it a go. So I bought the 6800 XT, and obviously that had 16 gigabytes of VRAM. That meant nothing to me when I bought it, like nothing. I bought the 6800 XT, gamed on it. I didn't get on with it. I don't know if that was. I mean, that could be down to user error. I just didn't really. I had problems in games with. It never felt right, so kind of stuttering and stuff like that, and I instantly kind of got frustrated with it. It kind of stopped me gaming at the time, and I think it was around the era that Warzone 1, Warzone 1 had kind of kicked off. Everyone's on Warzone 1. I'm trying to run it and I'm just like a stuttering mess. And I'm like, yeah, this is pretty like bad. Can't even play with, there's a few guys that are like, yeah, jump in a team, jump in with us. And I'm like, yeah, ain't gonna happen. This isn't running right. It's doing my head in. So I kind of got a bit frustrated with that, and I'm sure that there was maybe down to something that I was doing that I just wasn't aware of, some setting somewhere or something. But anyway, I kind of gave up on that. And my next purchase was a 3080 Ti, 12 gigabyte. So I went from a I don't know gigabyte to a 16 gigabyte and then down to a 12 gigabyte. Still, had no care of VRAM whatsoever. Didn't have a thought on it, didn't think about it, nothing was said about it. It just wasn't an issue that I found came up on any type of research that I was doing at the time. So I was like, right, okay. And I still have that GPU now. It's in my water-cooled build that my son's currently taken over. So it's getting used for Fortnite quite a lot. But yeah, we move forward now to like today. I'm running 4080 16 gigabyte, and I have a 7900 XTX 24 gigabyte. And to me, I'm like, right, 24 gigabytes like stupid. But like, I don't need 24 gigabyte. When am I going to need 24 gigabyte? And it kind of brings me to the thinking of, I think it was around the 30 series. Now, I'm pretty sure I remember during the 30 series that something was said when the 3090 was either rumoured to be released or launched, whatever it was. They would have 24 gigabytes of VRAM. So you're going from the 3080, I think there was a 3080 3080 12, 3080 Ti 12 to 24 in the 3090. But I think at the time there was a mention of the NVIDIA not doing a productivity workload kind of GPU. So what people would use for like 3D rendering and productivity tasks. I don't know a lot about those tasks, so there's not a lot I can say about it. But I think there was a mention of. I think I ended up like looking into it after one of the kind of VRAM arguments came up not long ago, and it seemed like in the 20 series, I don't remember the names, I'm not that hard into it, but I think in the 20 series you had like the 2080 Ti, which was the top gaming GPU, which I believe was 11 or 12 gigabytes. And then you had the Titan, which I believe wasn't particularly sold as a gaming GPU. It was sold purely as a productivity GPU. Now, whether people use Titans for gaming, I'm not sure. But I believe that was a 24 gigabyte. So obviously a huge leap in the amount of VRAM that was on it. But I believe that it was for productivity reasons. It wasn't, that VRAM wasn't there for gaming. So you come forward to today, and we've got the situation where you've got quite a lot of GPUs on 16 gigabytes. So AMD, I think AMD last generation, so when I got the 6800 XT, we're on 16 gigabytes, and then further up the stack, so the 6900 XT, 6950 XT, I believe those were 16 gigabytes as well. And then obviously we had the 3090 and 3090 Ti at 24 gigabytes. Now, I'm pretty sure the 3090 Ti or 3090 Ti, like I said, were kind of almost labeled as, we aren't going to do a separate productivity GPU. This is a gaming slash productivity GPU with 24 gigabytes of VRAM. And it just so happened to be that there was a shortage on trying to find any gaming GPUs. It was the fastest gaming GPU. The fact that it had 24 gigabytes of VRAM and people were paying extra for that 24 gigabytes of VRAM that they didn't need for gaming, I don't think people cared, were buying that GPU. It's available. People with a lot of money were just like, it's the fastest, ignore the 24 gigabytes of VRAM, that's what we're going with. And I don't know. Like, when I think about it, I'm thinking, okay, so did this change something with AMD and how they went into it? As in, was the 16 gigabytes on the AMD side in their top cards, was that aimed at gaming, or was that aimed at productivity? And if so, did AMD, by the time the 7000 series came along, did they then turn around and say, okay, maybe we lost sales to NVIDIA in the last generation because the people that wanted to buy a GPU for productivity, i.e. wanting a large amount of VRAM, we only offered them 16 gigabytes, whereas NVIDIA were offering 24 gigabytes at the top of the stack. So now 7000 series comes along and you've got AMD offering 16 gigabytes kind of mid-tier, and then you've got 20 gigabytes in the 7900 XT and 24 gigabytes in the XTX. NVIDIA's side, you've got the 4090 with 24 gigabytes, and then you're dropping back down to 16 gigabytes. So I'm kind of thinking, did something along the lines, somewhere along the lines, did the amount of VRAM that's going on to graphics cards, has it not been kind of made apparent what is, what's added for gaming, and where the line crosses of, okay, this is more intended for people that want to do productivity. And that's where I find it confusing, because the other way that I find it it becomes confusing is, how much does that impact what happens with games? As in game developers. Do game developers see a lot of people using graphics cards with higher VRAM? And does that give them an opportunity to maybe not put as much work into the final stages or the finishing up of a game, so that they can save time, basically get the game out faster, make more money because they're saving time, basically? Is that the kind of opportunity of, okay, if these people, these gamers now are going to use this much VRAM, we're going to make an opportunity of this, and we're suddenly going to put a little bit less work into how we finish off our games. We can get them out quicker and we can take advantage of this. And it's almost like, well, where does that end? Because you get to the point of, okay, if this continues to carry on, surely the effect on graphics card pricing is going to become ridiculous. But it begins to affect kind of the market, and not only that, but like the discussions and the arguments that go on within the communities, because you'll get people that'll be like, okay, I've got a 24 gigabyte card. They think it's for gaming, and they think anything less than that is, their card's not going to last. And even I'm in the situation now where I'm thinking, okay, is 12 gigabyte enough? When does that change? Is 16 gigabyte, obviously the discussion I had today is 16 gigabyte enough? And you think, well, surely it has to be. But is it? Who knows? And if it isn't, what is it going to take for the tables to turn back the other way, because you think, well, NVIDIA 50 series, okay, if they're going GDDR7, which is the newest VRAM, the newest memory coming out, it's going to be more expensive. But everyone wants more VRAM. But they want a cheaper GPU. Okay, well, those two things aren't going to exist. So something has to give. And every year, if we're going to say, or not every year, but every generation, if we're going to say we want more VRAM, we want more VRAM. Okay, so what, in 4 generations' time, we're going to be on 48 gigabytes of VRAM for a gaming GPU? Like, somewhere along the line, surely it has to stop. So you think, okay, well, AMD have been throwing obviously a lot of VRAM at their graphics cards, and the AMD kind of community, or certainly within the gaming community, will say everyone should buy AMD, or the reason they bought AMD is because they get more VRAM. Obviously, AMD are in kind of a situation where they're using the cheaper VRAM. They're using kind of older VRAM, which is less expensive, and they're throwing a lot at these, they're throwing more of it in the GPUs. But is it aimed at gaming? And if it's not, how do AMD change what they've done? Because if AMD are aware of what goes on, which I'd hope they are, of the discussions that go on, they'll know that people are buying their GPUs above a NVIDIA GPU because it comes with more VRAM. Are AMD in a situation where they can turn around and say, yeah, it's not actually aimed at you, it was actually intended for workload production, it wasn't actually intended for gaming? Can they turn around and say that? I don't think they can. So when AMD go forward and start using more expensive VRAM, which I can only assume that they're going to have to, how much do they start throwing at the GPUs? Do they start to say, okay, we can't do this anymore, we can't throw 20 or 24 gigabytes or even 16 at kind of mid-tier cards, because obviously these memory modules are a lot more expensive? And then what does that affect? Does that suddenly then have an effect on, we've gone through a stage of games have suddenly gone up in how much VRAM they're using to suddenly a big drop off, which is maybe going to upset developers, but it is what it is. Like, something has to lose somewhere along the line. So it's an interesting kind of discussion that I have no idea anymore. It's not something that, going back when I started building probably my first 2 or 3 computers, I had any care of. But then you almost get to the point of, do people care anyway? Is there a lot of people that are like, that's all right? If I play a game and I'm like, yeah, I'm at the top of my VRAM and I'm running out a little bit, I'll just drop some settings and no problem, I'm happy to go. Or do people absolutely lose it and say, that's it, I'm done with this, I'm moving to, if it's their NVIDIA GPU with 12 gigabytes and they've gone to 13, ran out, are they then going to say, that's it, I'm going AMD because I demand to have at least 16 gigabytes or 20 gigabytes or 24 gigabytes? I don't know. It's interesting. I'd love to kind of actually get more information. It's not the easiest thing to find. I mean, realistically, I think the only thing that you could, well, the only way that I'd ever get a real answer would be for like a game developer saying, no, there is no choice. Games are going to use this much VRAM. Your NVIDIA or AMD have no choice. To run these games, they are going to have to put this much VRAM on. But you see a lot of modern games that are destroying high-end cards, like breaking a 4090 to below 60 FPS that will only use 8 or 9 gigabytes of VRAM. That I never understand. It's like, okay, so this game here, which is, relatively doesn't even look that great, that's using nearly 12 gigabytes of VRAM versus an absolute masterpiece using 8 GB. So those are things that I don't understand, and I'm interested to know kind of where it goes. And yeah, it's kind of, it is a big discussion. I don't think people should fall out over it. It seems to be that people get really angry over it. At the end of the day, it is just gaming. I'm sure you can enjoy it. You can drop some settings. You don't need to, people don't need to get on other people's backs of they're dumb because they bought a certain brand and it didn't offer them enough or whatever. Like, some people just probably don't care. I probably would care if I ran out of VRAM, but at the same time, I don't know if I'd feel like, I don't know. I think that obviously the most of the discussions are NVIDIA skimp on VRAM, AMD offer you more VRAM, and that is obvious to see. The only thing is AMD tend to, when you see an AMD GPU in kind of the same game as a NVIDIA GPU, AMD do tend to use a little bit more sometimes. So in that sense, they kind of need to have a little bit more. You could argue that if NVIDIA just put some more on, this discussion would never happen. At the same time, if NVIDIA keep putting more and more on, then prices just go up, and where does that end? So, I don't know. If anyone's got answers, I'm here to listen. But I've been ranting on now for like nearly 22 minutes, so I'm going to call it there. But yeah, if you found this interesting, if you have any comments, like, I'd love to hear what people have got to say. And I'm going to stop it there. So thanks for listening, and I will catch you in the next one.